Saugatuck Township Hall. At this point, we'll call this meeting to order and we'll be roll call.
All right, Mr. Butler,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Helmrich,
Yes.
Mr. Eiley,
Yes.
Mr. Stannis.
Yes.
I'm present, Denise Webster, Mr. Work.
Yes.
All right, and then at this time we'll ask that we all stand and do the say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so now at this point, I'd like to ask if there are any comments or regarding the agenda, any additions or subtractions or. I have none. No, so I'll.
Move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Or. All those in favor? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the minutes. Minutes from December 12, 2022. So point, I'll just go page by page. So starting with page 1. Are there any comments or changes?
Under applicant comment, whole business, at the end of the first sentence, it should be how they plan to reduce the size.
One question I would ask in regards to page 1 under public comments, Rachel Hillman. Did she not also bring up the issue in regards to the tree line along the driveway, which then Ms. Wells clarified for us that there was nothing within the original plan. Wasn't she one that brought that up? Which forced then created us to ask Lene to clarify. Should that be noted within her comments?
Yeah, how do you want that worded?
Just a tree line along driveway.
She did.
Did she not?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So if you could just add that under one of your comments.
Got it.
Got that, Mark? Okay, on to page 2.
Second one should be trees. And then if you go to B, starting with it says where the acronym MOOT, all of that should read MDOT. And that goes throughout the page. And I believe there might be a repeat, but B is okay. The last line in C, I think that's a repeat, so maybe just look at that. Item D, very last word, it should be are present, period, not presented. The very last line on page 2 should be October of 2023.
Got it.
My only comment in regards to that is the motion, and realizing that we did make that motion, but because of the way the last sentence, hearing was held in November 2021 with the following conditions. Yes, we had a hearing in November 2021, but the following conditions, A through O or X was related to that particular meeting, not associated. Don't want to, that can be confused because the way it's written, that it was, those conditions were also in November 2021. No, it's not. It was because of our meeting in December that those conditions were put on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I understand why that's there, but because the way it's stated, it makes. So I don't know whether striking that would be appropriate. Because that was the motion was that we approve the special use with the following conditions. I understand that the hearing was, but we've already said that, have we not?
Yeah, we can clarify that to reduce the size of the approved pond on parcel number with the following condition.
Yes, I would strike hearing was held in November 2021. Because it's already been stated.
Got that, Marty?
Yep, got it.
Okay. And then page 3.
Item U, I believe that sentence wasn't finished.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what,
It should say like shall be adhered to or shall be made part of these conditions. Probably that shall be made part of the conditions. The goal is that anything that they've submitted, written, anything he said at the meeting is all part of his kind of promises.
Don't we have standard language that you use on that?
This would be it. So sorry,
Okay.
it's cut off.
Whatever that standard language is.
and under item 2, bylaws, commissioner discussion,
Yeah,
do we delete that first line?
Words go here.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
They're already there.
Page 4. Page 5.
That's really a repeat of page 2, is not.
Yeah, so then therefore we're gonna strike that here. Yeah, we have to make sure that that motion on page 5 is copied and pasted appropriately. That we've already discussed.
Page 6. Right, kind of same. Okay. So I will, entertain a motion. Approve the agenda as. Or minutes, I'm sorry.
So moved. Approve the minutes as amended.
Second. Support. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item number 5. This is the public comment period. So if the old business that is on the agenda today does not have a public comment period, so if you are here to speak to those items, this would be your opportunity to address those. You have 3 minutes as an individual. You just come up to the microphone, you state your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Well, you can speak to whatever you want. And then if you're speaking on behalf of the group, you have 5 minutes to read or say whatever you might have. But once again, state which group you're from and your name and your address. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I think the way we've done it before is we'll do the people in the room first, and then we'll go to the people joining virtually. And then I also wanted folks to know that we did receive, and all the commissioners received, a copy of the letter submitted by the residents of the sanctuary with, I haven't counted all the names, but probably around 30 or 40 names. So the points here, I mean, you're welcome to repeat them, but they're all here. We also have a letter from the Mowers and Marion Fells. That's also here, part of the record. So, you know, you don't have to repeat it. We have it here in our record. We also have a letter from Scott and Vicky Phelps. So that is in the record too. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there's, you know, certainly it's your decision if you want to get up and reread the letter, but these have been read and they are here and they were given to commissioners in advance of the meeting. I can also keep the timer for the 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So at this point, we'll open it up to the room. So anyone in row, say, in the first 3 rows.
we still have a sound system? Oh, no, turn like this.
Can everyone hear?
I'm David Bean, 3720 Shorewood Dunes, 20 years. Community member with my wife, I'm here, and 40 years professional in creating experiences, events, and hospitality. And I've got a really high selective personality as far as what makes a great experience. Been practicing it professionally for a long time. I have a strong BS meter, and I listened to what Mr. Swan said in the last meeting and took a good contemplative time, a couple of days out of hours out of my days since the last meeting here, and walked the property. Hope I didn't trespass anywhere, and just around that area, made some loops and drove through and so on. I also interviewed several people who stayed at Auto Camp properties around the nation, and yeah, so I'm here to express full-throated support for the Auto Camp project. I have three reasons why, kind of three buckets. One is the experience what we want? And I think it's an authentic Art Coast experience. I think so because it's custom Airstreams. It's a high touch, really fantastic opportunity for us as a community and for visitors. It's walk to town. There's the berm as proposed. You walk the property. There's a specific word you guys use, essential character of the corridor. I think it retains that for sure. The second bucket of reasons that I support it is cost and our community impact, or I should say its impact on our community. Employee housing. Holy smokes, what a great idea, right? We're starting to get priced out here for good, well-priced housing for employees, and we're creating that. It creates a winter and shoulder season employment opportunities and commerce opportunities for guests and employees and other suppliers. There's the $200,000 escrow fund for Blue Star improvements. We can all vote on that one pretty clearly. We need more than that, but that's a heck of a private commitment. And it's not committed to just their front door, I think correctly. Okay. And I believe I'll state this straight. I want you to make sure that the special use and the rezone are both really well conditioned to keep it to its intended use. And I think this is probably the most important part for me, is I don't want a KO here. And frankly, I don't want another huge unpermitted pond and more sand dunes. I live in the dunes, but I don't want to see new ones being built. The third bucket I have is just, oh, sorry.
3 minutes.
Oh, I'm done. Okay.
So
Thank you. Yep, thank you. No, row 4. Row 5.
I'm Annie Van Dyke. I live at 6543 Sanctuary Trail. And there's no arguing any of those points. He's right. I just don't know if the placement is the best place for it. And I talked about that before, so I'm not gonna go over things like that. One thing I heard was employee housing. I think they were gonna have 6 rooms and there were like 27 or 28 employees. I think I read that. I don't know the exact amount, but somewhere in here it said how many employees. So they don't have enough for all the employees. But I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about whether we've all thought about the implications of this, the long term, as far as, and this is probably, it has nothing to do with them, but what it will bring in and how it's going to affect us as far as, do we need to look at our adding police and sheriff deputies here? Because we have one here that you see on occasion along the road. I don't know how many operate actually for the township, and they'll come if they're called, but there isn't really a big police presence seen.
other than the one we see along the road or, you know, maybe downtown. The other thing I would ask you to look into if you move ahead with this is the effects of our high-speed internet, and do we have the infrastructure? Right now, I would say we probably don't, just because every weekend in the summer it dogs bad. This is hardwired internet service and phones and the coverage area. And again, I'm going to bring up safety, and this is the only thing I'll repeat, is safety and traffic. I know there was the study done and all that, but I'm very concerned about that with the new little lane they're going to put in. Because traffic doesn't just go one way on Sanctuary, it goes both. And for the residents of Sanctuary Trail, trying to pull out, you cannot see around that curve. And especially in the summer when the trees are full. So is there a way that could be changed or enhanced? And the last is the noise issue. And yeah, there's going to be a berm grade, but that won't take care of all the noise. And I know there's supposed to be quiet hours, but then I read that there's going to be places for events. So it just bothers me a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Mike Ditch, I live at 6-5, but to Sanctuary Trail, and I'm not speaking as a representative of any group, but I'm speaking as an individual. I appreciate that all of you have received a letter from Sanctuary Trail, and it sounds like almost everybody in the community signed that letter. And I won't go back over those things, but there's just a couple of things I wanted to point out. One is I'm not sure of the number of parking spaces that the auto camp has set up, but there is a regulation. If you're not aware of it, maybe you are, maybe you're fully aware of it, but I wanted to point out that there's a Michigan Administrative Code regulation 325.1558 Rule 8 that says that it must be at least 1.5 times the number of the vehicle parking space equal to 1.5 times the number of sites in a campground, which would mean you need about 168 sites for what I understand is being proposed. So I want to make sure that's done. And I don't know exactly, again, where the entrance to the auto camp site is going to be in relation to the entrance to Sanctuary Trail. But if it's close and there's not sufficient parking, I think you got an issue of people trying to park on our private street that is very narrow and that wouldn't be a place people should be parking. And also the fact that people might want to cut through if there's increased traffic, cut through our subdivision that has a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit on our private road. And I doubt somebody cutting through to avoid traffic on Blue Star is going to be going 15 miles an hour. We don't have sidewalks. We have kids who are in the street playing. We have kids walking in the neighborhood, people walking in the neighborhood. So I don't know if that's considered. And I think that the auto camp is getting kind of short shrift to our neighborhood by saying we're a residential neighborhood that it's wrapping around, that wraps around a commercial district. I have no idea what they say we're wrapping around, but it's kind of like in their adjacent uses discussion. We're talking about we're just wrapping around a commercial district already. So I think that isn't quite true. And the other thing I'm going to make sure of is that the board, the township board, knows what's said at this meeting. Like I think that at the board meetings I've attended, they've been perfectly summarized as to what happened at the meeting. But one thing I would take issue with is whether it's fair to characterize the public comments as being equally in support of auto camp. Maybe tonight it might be fair to say that, but we also have maybe 30 people who have repeated our letter. So I think to say that the community is in support of this based on the planning commission meeting is not quite accurate. But I was happy to see the special, use. Thumbs up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the crowd?
Am I gonna get a separate chance to speak? Or
Yes.
go now? Okay.
Yeah. You'll be able to speak. Yes,
Could I?
sure, absolutely.
I'm Kathy Freese Wilson, and I live at 3482 65th Street. And my only comment would be around the possibility of looking at an entrance that is not an entrance from Blue Star Highway. So an entrance that could be from one of the other two side roads, because it seems to me that that could alleviate some of the problems and concerns about traffic and safety on Blue Star Highway. It may not be to the liking of those individuals whose properties would be impacted by the entry being there, but certainly for overall safety concerns, I think it is something that perhaps the commission needs to be exploring. But thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in person to say anything? No? Okay, then we'll send it over to Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom?
Ellen Mack.
Any hands up?
Hey, guys. Hey, my name's Alan Mack. I am at 3470 Riverside Drive, 3472 Riverside Drive, and 6754 Saugatuck Beach Road. I'm voicing very strong support for AutoCamp. I think it's exactly the kind of thing that fits perfectly with the fit and feel of Saugatuck. I think it's, looking over the plans, everything. I look at the investment that they're making in our community, and I think this is exactly the type of stuff that this community likes. We're probably going to have a little extra traffic from it. We're going to have a little extra congestion, maybe a little noise, but at the same time, it's, part of the growth of our community. And I think it's excellent use for the land that's right there. I can even give you back a couple minutes of your life then too. So thank you.
Thank you. Right, next.
Coastal Alliance.
Good evening. I'm David Swan. My statement this evening is on behalf of the Saugatuck Dunes Coastal Alliance. To begin, an apology. The Alliance posted earlier today on Facebook that the applicant had not yet conditioned the zoning change request specific to AutoCamp. Thanks to Daniel DeFranco for quickly alerting us that the applicant has conditioned the zoning change. And again, our apologies to the property owner, Saugatuck Township, as well as to this commission for missing that. We've made the change on our Facebook post and we've made a different post. So thanks for the heads up, Daniel. We appreciate that. However, the Alliance does remain concerned with the persistent creep of commercial development and the accompanying traffic, noise, and light pollution into the northwest corner of the township. The planning or the master plan clearly states, and I quote, "The northwest corner of the township should be preserved for public open space, and the portion that remains in private ownership should be maintained for low intensity uses, like the art colony and church camp," end quote. C1 is not a low intensity use. In the past 5 years, the Planning Commission has allowed in this neighborhood the following: 2 special approval use projects that collectively require excavating more than 500,000 tons of sand. One of those is the proposed 50 slip marina at North Shore of Saugatuck, and the other is the Van Horn sand dune mine, formerly known as a ski pond. The other is the third is the zoning change from R1 to C1 immediately north across 135th from the proposed zoning change before you this evening. We feel the cumulative impact of these approvals have changed and will continue to change the essential character of Dugout Road and Riverside Drive. The November 15, 2022 memorandum for record from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, on which the township was copied, mentions character 35 times alone, and then details in its 56 pages how the proposed marina will adversely affect the Rivermouth area. More commercial development continuing to creep up on this neighborhood, sandwiching this neighborhood, will only create more adverse effects. Thanks for the good work you all do. We appreciate it. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dave. Is there anyone else?
Nope.
No?
No.
Okay. And no more. We will close public comment and move on to number 6, old business. So in the first item on old business is the rezoning of parcel 20-003-041-00 from partial rezoning R1 to C1. Parcel 20-003-060-18, partial rezoning from R1 to C1. And then parcel 20-003-071-00 rezoning all from R1 to C1. And the applicant is Chad Van Horn. So at this point, I don't know if there's anyone wishing to say anything from, I don't see Chad.
Well, we're both applicants, right? Isn't it? Or we're the applicant. Is Chad the applicant?
On the application, it says Chad Van Horn, but at all. So it's Chad Van Horn at all.
But
You're the contact email, so yeah.
happy to hear.
If you'd like to.
Can I give my little
Yes.
pony show here? Thanks.
Presentation?
Bring it up.
Bear with me a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, for allowing us to speak one more time on behalf of our AutoCAD projects. Since the last meeting, we took into account the comments and concerns that you brought up, as well as the public has brought up. And I think in the last submission, we did address as many of the issues that the public had brought up. I had not seen an additional letter yet, so it was news to me. However, I believe we tried to address as many things as we could. And we're coming back today to explain how we've addressed them. And in your packets, you have a lot of detail about the information of how we're addressing it, but I just wanted to highlight a few things, not go through the whole package, but
This, and just so we can, this first one here is for the rezone that we were going to speak of is, I mean, is that what we're,
yeah, is that
okay?
well, okay, the presentation, some of the information I was going to give crosses both because there's some conditions on the rezoning and the SEU is kind of tied to it, so I'm not sure how to pull it apart.
Okay.
If you want to cut me off and I can concede later, that's fine, sorry. Okay, first of all, from a very high level, I wanted to step back and take a look at, yeah, go ahead, next slide, sorry. Very high level, step back and take a look at what we're proposing here. We're really looking at a holistic solution for this site. So while half the site is already zoned commercial and the other half we're requesting a zoning change, we are taking a holistic look that otherwise would end up in some fragmented uses and maybe fragmented users. What it's enabling us to do is preserve 50% of the site as is, the trees, because of the setbacks, the southern triangle, the trees will be, those will stay in place as they are. For the remaining 50% or so, we are looking at a low impact development approach. And what that means is, as we go in and look at putting trailers and tents and ADA cabins into our site, we're carefully placing those into the woods, be sensitive about cutting the trees down, as well as being sensitive about damaging roots as much as possible. So we're really trying to leave a campground feel, leave as much in place as possible as we can. In addition, the experience along Blue Star Highway, which I think meets the intent of the code, we're trying to preserve that as much as possible. So there's a couple of things that are accomplishing that. First is a tree protection zone, which is a 70-foot setback along the highway. Plus, in addition to that, we're putting some berming in. The berming will be landscaped. And the intent of that is to both shield neighboring communities from us, from any kind of light noise and sounds, as well as us campers on the inside want to be protected from the noise of the highway, because the highway noise is actually probably the loudest thing in the township when you stand next to it. So that's That's really important for us to create a campground feel, so preserving the trees. And creating a barrier of sound and protection for us, as well as anybody who doesn't want to see us or hear us. So essentially, we're really looking to be hidden. We're not like the Best Western. Don't want to have a big sign and let people see the hotel. We actually would rather people find us, know about us, come to our site intentionally versus drive in and be like, oh, I wonder what this is, and then they don't get what they expect because they didn't realize they're staying in an Airstream or something. So we're very, we want to be hidden. We want to be low profile. That includes lighting. We follow a Dark Skies initiative, all the lighting for that. And again, I wanted to reemphasize why we selected this site. The 2016 master plan does designate the site for commercial uses. We would have selected other sites, but if you look at the master plan, there's very little areas designated for commercial use. We could go out in theory into agricultural lands that you guys are trying to protect and try to do the same thing, but there aren't services there. There aren't roads that have the capacity to handle traffic safely, and there's a host of other problems in going somewhere else. So, and then really the most important thing is the proximity to the town enable us to have adjacency to the Blue Star bike path, which allows people to bike downtown, walk downtown, or if we need to, we can use the interurban. So really trying to minimize impacts of traffic, trying to minimize the impact of having something way out in the middle of nowhere. We're using berms and protection and lots of different things. In addition, our campground is unique to as compared to other campgrounds. Our guests come in, they come to a common parking lot, and I'm just going to reiterate some things I said last time very briefly. They come and check in the clubhouse, they grab a cart, and then they walk to each site. We're not like an AOA, we're not like a Yogi Bear where people drive up to their site with their cars or big rigs or anything like that. This is a very more of a boutique hotel outdoor experience. And really, when you look at the impact on the economy, is one thing we are also doing is we're introducing an outdoor lodging concept that can take short-term pressure off single family homes that are in short-term rentals. We know that exacerbates affordability issues by taking housing stock off the market that's used for short-term rentals. We see what we're supplying as a counter to that. Our campground can also accommodate group sizes that some of the lodging complexes in Saugatuck cannot do. We see that as a benefit to Saugatuck. We also are open. I think someone here said about our seasonality. We're open all year long. Our intention is to generate seasonal demand all year, so that even on the shoulder seasons, there's a tax benefit to the township and the city. We're bringing people in on when it's really quiet like today, and hopefully able to continue and support the businesses here and good restaurants and things like that. Good, next one. It's just an example from our Cape Cod site. It's a picture I actually took. Couldn't believe it came out, but it actually shows how we comply with our Dark Skies initiatives. All the lights face downward. I actually had to do an extended exposure to get the light, but it really, we have no outdoor lights pointing up. You know, you look at how Dark Skies initiative is supposed to be employed. We're following that to a T as much as possible. So now to walk through there's a bunch of things in your packet that we followed up on, but there are 4 things I just wanted to briefly go over and provide some context and allow you to have any questions about it. First are the proposed conditional approvals for the zoning and the SAU. And we'll get into some of that detail. Second is the solution for safety controls on Blue Star Highway access points. Third are some specifics on the workforce housing solution that came up on the last meeting. And then finally, the question came up in understanding how the contractual sewage capacity issues would be resolved. So I'm going to walk through those things now. So the conditions of approval that we proposed, and these are ones that we had proposed, as I understand it, that the commission could not impose upon us. So these are self-imposed restrictions. First of all, the legal approach is that there's two components to it. One are restrictions on the zoning, and one are restrictions on the SAU. So the one for the property use is the zoning, and the ones that are a use, like how the campground is used, functions, are tied to the special approval use. So in the zoning, the condition we've imposed, just to summarize what's in your packet, is that the only use allowed is a campground. If any, there's no other, all this other C1 uses for the parcels that are being rezoned are not allowed. So that's been funneled down to that one single use as a campground. On top of that, the SAU further limits it that the campground has to be a type that AutoCamp is proposing. So the centralized parking, no big rigs coming into the sites, 112 sites only. We don't allow other recreational vehicles to come to our sites and park there. So it's a closer, like I was sort of using the term of boutique outdoor lodging concept versus just a traditional campground. If someone does come back and AutoCamp goes away and operator number 2 or 3 comes in and says, oh, but I want to do something different, they would have to come back to you for a new SAU permit if it was allowed at that time. And then likewise, if someone came back and said, well, I kind of want to add a little hotel over here in the corner, they couldn't do it because the zoning wouldn't allow it. It only allows a campground use. They'd have to come back if allowed and do a rezoning. So it's a pretty restrictive use, so that what you're looking at today, what you see is what you get. And if someone wants to change it, they've got to come back in front of you or your successors and go through the same process again, if allowed at that time. Moving on to highway safety. First of all, there's two different things, obviously, that you guys have to consider whether you like us or not. First is the existing conditions on the highway. After the last meeting, we went back and talked with the ACRC. They looked at the accident and incident reports on the highway, and from a technical standpoint, there's nothing in terms of the level of accidents that would indicate a safety issue or any kind of action needed to be taken between the intersection of Holland and 135th. Now that's sort of a technical thing. Of course, people always have safety concerns, but from a technical standpoint, that's where they stood. Also, there's no level of service issues. It's traffic jams and things that would also warrant, using the legal technical term from an engineering standpoint, traffic improvements, lights, or other solutions. They did acknowledge that the intersection of 135th and Blue Star was a 6-way intersection, which is sort of a dysfunctional design from the get-go, whether you have 1 car or 500. That's something that, there are lots of little things you could do that to improve it, narrow it, change it so it can reconfigure it to a 4-way intersection. They thought of other ideas, but again, the safety and the traffic flow don't warrant it, but whether you as a township, that's obviously outside our hands. So what we've tried to address is what we can control right now in 2 different ways. First, the traffic study that we commissioned recommended a deceleration taper, which we implemented. The taper lane was reviewed and preliminarily accepted by the ACRC. When we submit our site plan, or when that goes under review, the engineered version of it will be more thoroughly reviewed, but as of right now, they're supporting the deceleration lane and the recommendation of the traffic study. Go to the next slide. You can see here the deceleration lane starts well before our property as you go south, hits our property, some new pavement where that turnoff is, and that's the single point of private road access that we're proposing. There are other existing curb cuts today by the motel and the single family home. Those will be removed. And then the deceleration will continue on at the dimensions required by the engineering to meet with the Holland intersection. So basically someone coming down, whether they're turning into our property or the Holland intersection, can use this extended deceleration lane. And that's the one thing they proposed. Now, beyond this, AutoCamp has proposed a $200,000 escrow to fund other traffic safety improvements on the highway. And that $200,000 was initially established. We asked an engineer, how much would it cost to install a light at the intersection of Holland? And that was the $200,000 estimate. Now, the light isn't necessarily warranted from a technical standpoint, again, from how they measure it. But if you guys so chose that, hey, we really do want a light and we're going to force the issue and install it, those $200,000 in funds could be used, or it could be used to address better intersection with the sanctuary or something at 135th. So that $200,000 is sort of we understand we can't control what gets warranted by the highway department or how you guys control it, but at least we can provide the funds and help solve that issue. That's really an existing issue today. Traffic study that says our impact will not be significant on the highway, but that's what those funds are for. This is just a thing that you can go back to the bicycle for a second. Great picture. The bicycle, the reason I just wanted to bring this up is we not only encourage bicycling, but we actually provide the bicycles free. And I mentioned this last time, but I just thought it was important to bring it up. Everybody, we use fleet of 30, 40 bicycles. People come in, you can use them all day long. They come with bike walks, you can bike downtown where you need a bike. So we really are encouraging alternative modes of transportation. Again, the site selection being adjacent to Blue Star Highway, hopefully facilitate some walking. If not, the interurban can also be used. Going on to the affordable housing. So the affordable housing component was something that came up last time. The existing hotel, you can see on the left-hand side, the location of it, and then the right-hand side, how it fits into our site plan. The hotel has 9 units today. Not all of them are functional for as a housing unit versus a hotel unit. So we have to reconfigure, combine a few, add some mechanical rooms and stuff. So we're probably somewhere in the range of 6 or 7 would be affordable housing. It's not intended, I think someone had a concern. It is not intended to house the 15 or 20 employees that our property would employ. It's intended to provide housing for the few people. It's not really a family workforce housing solution, much as like the younger single people or a cleaner, whoever's out there and really needs that affordable housing there. Most of our sites, even if it offered, not everybody would take the housing on site. Some people kind of like a separation between church and state and like to leave work. So, it's not that kind of housing. It's not on campus. It's not a solution for everybody. But we are providing it, or we work on, fixing the units interior up. Some are in okay shape. Some had some water damage. So we have to go through and renovate it. Also, just a last thing on the, sorry, go back to that. On the southwestern side of the curb cuts to the highway will remove access to the workforce housing from the interior of our property, and the southwest side, the southeast side will have a berm protecting the hotel. It'll make it more visible and protecting our campground and the hotel from the sounds of the highway and the noise and stuff. Finally, just following up on the contractual sewage issues, just to clarify again, the existing physical capacity is adequate to service our projects. The pipes, the pumps, the equipment at the processing plant, that is all fine. The issue is the township's contractual capacity to take on more users from the past. So since the last meeting, Daniel DeFranco, as town manager, had some conversations with the city of Douglas. While I'm not privy to what those conversations are, those are negotiations that have to be done confidentially. What we do know is that they do have additional contractual capacity available. They have indicated that they would consider the sale of it. There's obviously a lot of negotiations and price setting and form a contract and get approvals to get all that together. But it seems like there's a good chance that it's there. I'll let Daniel if he wants to go on about it, but anyway, since we can't control that, what we're proposing is the reason we're putting as a condition is that the approval should be conditional to that being satisfied. That way, you guys know what the capacity we're demanding is. They can negotiate based on that demand and future growth, whatever you need. And then additionally, we would establish a escrow fund for whatever cost we need to fund to purchase that additional contractual capacity. And that would be funded prior to any kind of building permit getting issued. So finally, thanks again for your time and listening to this. I'm here for any kind of questions as you're talking, if you want a little clarification. But if approved, we'd love to be part of the Saugatuck community, be a business partner, and count Saugatuck among our outdoor destination locations. Be excited to have that. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe I wonder if we combine the staff update, and I actually asked Daniel to come here too to kind of give us a little bit of to give planning update as to what he can share regarding the sewer conversations that we had with Douglas as well. But I figure maybe we'll just get it all out of the way and then we'll move on into our.
Okay, do you want Daniel to go first?
I suppose it doesn't matter. Sure, Daniel.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's like, what do you want to know? No, I think that this is I think it seems, it might be strange that, you know, all of a sudden sewer capacity is coming up. I think that as a planning commission, in the next few years, you will be hearing a lot more about utilities. So this is probably a great opportunity to start that conversation. I'm not gonna go into so much of ton of the history, but essentially Saugatuck Township was not a part of the creation of Cow Lake. So we did not fund the initial creation of the wastewater treatment plant. We bought in afterwards, and therefore we have the least percentage of capacity in that plant. Well, I guess Lake Town has the least amount of capacity, but we have the least amount of capacity as a constituent member of Cow Lake. We have about 90,000 gallons per day compared to, let's say, Douglas, who has 496,000 gallons per day, which severely hinders our ability to grow as a community. And I think that when we talk about growth, you have to consider not just new developments, but there may be pre-existing developments that one day will have the need to connect to sewer. And right now, we're right up there. We have about 30,000 gallons per day of capacity that's free. We can really only hit 75% of our capacity, where the penalty is a moratorium on future connections. So that's kind of, you know, the situation that we're in right now. And so in general, I think the township has an interest in acquiring additional capacity from our municipal partners, whether that be Douglas, the city of Saugatuck, and there's also a private developer who owns a significant amount of capacity in Lake Town. So I think we're kind of looking at everything, but we do realize that in order to grow and in order to accommodate existing developments, we are going to have this conversation about acquiring additional capacity. The consequence of not doing so is just that, a moratorium on additional connections. And also to give you a kind of sense of where we're at, our infrastructure is the newest infrastructure out of all the communities. So we have infrastructure that can handle additional flow, whereas Douglas and the city of Saugatuck do not have that same infrastructure, where if there were a major project to go into Douglas would really have to think about whether or not their infrastructure could handle it. We are confident that our infrastructure could handle that. So when we talk about acquiring additional capacity to handle new projects, that's really all we're talking about, is buying the capacity that already exists in the plan, but not having to do any of the hard infrastructure improvements. And so that's the conversation that's come up. I know that this came up when we talked about Ivy House and they're needing to establish a drain district. And I think a lot of attention was probably misfocused on Ivy House itself, when really what it was a greater need for handling stormwater on Blue Star Highway, because what we realized we had was a drain district or a drain system that was abandoned in the 1970s when the highway was put in, and MDOT didn't want anything to do with it, and it just sat there. And now we've had the ability to establish a drain district. We're going to see the county drain office move in there and actually, develop that, so we'll have proper stormwater drainage, excuse me. And then this is kind of a similar situation where Auto Camp is coming in. They're requiring more capacity than we really have to offer, but it's highlighting a larger issue for the community. So I just kind of want to put that in context. Negotiation talks, or I should say talks, have started with Douglas. They are very sensitive, so I don't want to go into them. It's kind of a little bit of a private matter. It's kind of early on, but we're very happy that Douglas is having those conversations with us. And we're happy with the direction that they're going, and we're continuing to talk. And there's been a lot of background work that I have done, and really a lot of background work that our engineer Dana has done. So things are happening on that end. I don't know if you have any questions about that before I move on to the road. So the road, Blue Star Highway, way before Auto Camp, we have heard residents complain, and I think that there's absolutely a difference between what Allegan County Road Commission says on paper and the statistics say versus the experience of the resident. And clearly the experience of the resident is their challenges on Blue Star Highway. Even before Auto Camp, this was definitely, I think, on most of our radars. There has been kind of a major development with the last election. We modified the language of our road millage, which now allows us to spend funds on the development of non-motorized pathways, sidewalks, and safety and pedestrian safety improvements. So all of a sudden, the township does have funds to begin to seriously consider improvements to Blue Star Highway. We've also started talks with the fire district, with our planner Renee Wells, Dana Bird, our engineer, myself, David Eiley, and the road commission about what to do with Blue Star. I think that the relationship between us and the road commission for a long time has really just kind of been a situation of us speaking different languages. And I think we're learning how to speak each other's languages. And we did talk about what's the next step. And I think we all kind of agreed that if we could put out a request and hire an outside consultant to do a comprehensive study on Blue Star Highway, specifically focusing on all those intersections, we get a lot of information in and we can begin to plan for each specific intersection. Because I think, driving on Blue Star Highway, there are a lot of things that come up. Pedestrians need to cross. There needs to be better flow, or there needs to be some break up in the traffic pattern. So depending on the intersection, we have different priorities. So I think with that report, we'll have the insight in order to figure out what improvements we need to pursue in order to get the desired effect. So that is now in motion, and I feel like we do have buy-in from fire, and we do have buy-in from the Allegan County Road Commission. So that's kind of where we're at right now with that. Yes, Michael.
Thanks for all that. We've got kind of a dilemma though, I think of some sort. That's all good, but that's going to start to move, but that's going to take a long time. I'd say years for something to see something actually happen along that road to make an improvement, taking a guess.
Mhm.
So in the meantime, we've got this proposal, which is significant because it has a lot of users going in and out of that property, both north and southbound. And then we have the clinic going in, and we have potential of the brewery going in right up the street.
Mhm.
So the cumulative effect of not just the traffic, just not counting cars going back and forth, but the danger, in my view, is left turns and right turns. And that's when you're stopped trying to make a left and you've got a tandem gravel truck coming at you at 50 miles an hour. That's a little unnerving. And so you're just hoping that everybody's paying attention, because if something goes haywire, it's going to be catastrophic. So, the typical response to when people are trying to make a left, I'll stick with 50 miles an hour and drive on the shoulder around you. That's the kind of behavior we have on the highway. So, my point is that we have significant issues with regard to traffic, for all kinds of good reasons, developers going in and have all kinds of activity. But the time lag between when you can get all that good work done and we start to see some physical results it's a huge gap. And that's a concern of mine for us all together. So it's kind of
Yeah, I mean, we could do something like, I hope the report can be completed over the summer. One thing we could do is say, well, if what is our biggest, which intersection poses the most danger, and just focus on that. And maybe we say, hey, because Auto Camp went in here, this is the intersection we start with first. So there's ways to perhaps approach it to expedite some improvements.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it will take some time to do it right, because you want to make sure the improvement you're doing is going to have the desired effect. But we might think about that.
Sure. Good.
I have a question about this comprehensive broad study of the road.
Mhm.
It sounded like the only way to get that done is to hire outside consultants. It sounded like the road commission wouldn't do a broad study like that. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. I think we'd get a better result out of that to hire a firm that specializes in, road improvements or that specializes in looking at roads from a different perspective.
Okay. And then who would pay for that study?
That's an interesting question. The township could fund it. It could come out of this escrow that's being proposed from AutoCamp. I think we'd have to get into further conversation about that.
Is there a chance that two cities could help with that?
I doubt it, just because I think the section of Blue Star that we're looking at is just in Saugatuck Township. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't propose the idea to Douglas and say, Douglas, we're looking at this. Do you want to be involved? And do you want to look at your section? So it feels more continuous, whatever improvements that we're
Yeah,
approaching.
my point is that if Blue Star becomes a nightmare, just a horrible condition, who knows? And it's going to affect visitor traffic into this town. And so, well, I don't want to go into Saugatuck. It's hard to get in there, and backups, it's dangerous, it's weird, it's like, I'm just gonna go down to South Haven, something like that. So it's just, they need to have some skin in, I think, at some degree, because it's going to affect them.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have any idea what the magnitude of cost, just rough order of magnitude of cost for a study like that?
I think Lene might have a better idea. I don't think it would cost
Yeah, I mean, I think we were thinking around like 20,000 or less.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's like really a lot of data gathering and then understanding priorities at each one of those intersections. As Daniel mentioned, there could be kind of competing priorities, so a solution that maintains traffic flow is not going to give you gaps in the traffic. And we've heard that gaps are important, especially for the emergency vehicles.
Right.
So we have to identify what those priorities are at each one, and then maybe some kind of high level concepts for those intersections. And we even talked about ways we could look at more like temporary incremental improvements. So like testing out a solution. Even the fire district mentioned, they have those traffic lights that are on trailers. Like, could we test that at an intersection for a season or a few months and do some speed studies before and after, do some surveys, see if that works before those larger investments are made.
Can you do that without the road commission's permission?
Well, of course, we have to
I'm
have,
just curious.
yes, that's a good point. We need full collaboration with the road commission, and we're hoping that maybe they would be interested in some of this incremental approach, because it's kind of a new way of thinking nationally about roadway improvements, is that kind of tactical, test it first and then make refinements, kind of like prototyping. Yeah.
But you're still stuck with the problem that right now, the road commission analysis of Blue Star as it stands right now is that there are no technical difficulties that would demand any changes. So we're starting off at loggerheads because they're saying there's nothing wrong with that road. And we're all saying, we live here, the road stinks.
well, because the trigger to get their attention is you gotta have accidents.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And so if you want to be proactive.
well, yeah,
I also.
I'll crash my car right after yours.
I also did hear Daniel mention that the county they're listening.
Yeah.
They're hearing us.
Yeah.
They're hearing the public. They're hearing that people are upset with the safety concerns. So I don't disagree with you that that's been their approach. But I mean, having listened to Daniel, I think they're softening.
Well, it's worth it to follow that up, but coming back to Michael's point, is that you're still probably 3 to 5 years away before the first shovel goes in the ground.
For major infrastructure changes.
Yeah, sure.
But this is intriguing, this thesis test, this low-cost thesis testing that you said is happening nationally. That's new to me. I wasn't aware of it. It's very intriguing. I love the idea of testing something before massive investment. Right. It's the wrong investment because it was never tested, right?
Prototyping.
I mean, there are steps one takes, and I've said this before in these meetings. But I forget, a year ago, whatever, when the township paid to put in this, what's your speed? There's not been one accident at that intersection of Old Allegan and Blue Star since those went up.
Interesting.
And that was a very incremental or
Yeah, that's an
test type.
example. Yep.
Yeah, the township.
Is it gonna lead to a traffic light? We don't know, but it's really had an impact.
It was the township that paid. For
Yes, we had to pay for
the
those.
sign and the new stop signs with the.
Yeah, and they were, it was very reasonable, and it seems to have had a very positive effect.
So I had asked Daniel to come here because I know traffic, the safety part of this and the sanitary were important issues regarding the auto camp project that's being proposed tonight. So we wanted to I wanted him because he knows most about it, has the most information to pass it on to us firsthand. So that we can make an informed decision. So thank you for coming. I do appreciate it. And I don't know if anyone else has any other questions for Daniel.
Your point is very well made. This isn't an auto camp issue. This is a Saugatuck Douglas Township issue. And the issue isn't just one thing, it's sanitary and roads that we're focused on now. It's broader. And we need to think broader, to plan broader.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
everybody.
appreciate you taking the time. Yeah.
So the first request on the agenda is the conditional rezoning. So the applicant, since the last meeting, as they spoke about, has placed conditions, they've offered conditions on their rezoning. And they're copied into your memo, the planning memo, as well as the materials the applicant submitted. I can read those off if you'd like. So the first one, that the only approved use on the property would be a campground, along with accessory uses, buildings and structures. By way of example, include things like pool, spa, sauna, fire pit, playground equipment, restroom and shower facilities, gathering spaces, and a clubhouse. Number two, none of the uses permitted by right in C1 shall be allowed on the rezoned property while the conditional rezoning is in effect. Number three, with the exception of the campground, none of the special uses would be allowed while the conditional rezoning is in effect. Number four, that the conditional rezoning would be subject to the approval of the special use, the special approval use. Number five, that the use of the property for campground would be subject to the site plan approval for a campground. Number six, that the conditional rezoning shall expire 3 years from the latter of the effective date of the rezoning or site plan approval, unless progress has been diligently pursued and substantial completion has occurred under the approved site plan. The township may extend the period upon the request of the developer and upon a showing of good cause. Number seven, if the developer determines not to proceed with the proposed campground, or if at any time the property owner and campground operator no longer wish to operate the approved campground on the rezoned property, the property owner or developer or operator with the owner's approval may request that the conditional rezoning be voided, understanding that voiding the conditional rezoning means the rezoned property that was conditionally rezoned from R1 to C1 will revert back to the R1 zoning. In the event the zoning ordinance is amended such that the campground use is no longer allowed as a SAU or otherwise permitted as a right, the campground use may be continued as the law provides for lawful non-conforming uses. Number nine, nothing in this conditional rezoning request or any of the listed conditions shall be construed as changing the existing zoning of any property or portion thereof currently zoned C1, or restricting the allowable uses on any property or portion thereof currently zoned C1. In other words, the conditions on the rezoning apply to the rezoned property. and don't affect what's already zoned C1. So we included some review and analysis regarding various standards that we look at when considering a rezoning request. There was a question at the meeting in November about the boundary line, and you'll see in the applicant's materials and as well as what we presented at the last meeting that the master plan clearly shows this property and the boundaries where they're seeking the C1 designated as commercial. That's in the future land use map. And the way that we look at that future land use map is kind of the visual depiction of the goals and objectives of the master plan. Certainly our master plan has sometimes could be taken as policies or goals or objectives that sometimes contradict one another, right? Like we want to see economic development, but we also want rural preservation, right? Like we want to see economic development, but we don't want traffic, right? And so it's sort of this push and pull, but we do have that land use plan that is that representation of those. So that is consistent with that land use plan. The property cannot be reasonably used as zoned. Well, they could be, certainly. Nobody has requested residential on these properties yet, but it could be, it could be used for residential. There's nothing stopping them from doing a site condominium or coming in and doing a land division and putting up some houses. Number C, that the zone change is supported and consistent with the goals, policies, and future land use map of the master plan. I keyed into the master plan map. Certainly there are other goals and policies that would come into play here as well. We do have goals and policies about placing commercial uses where we have utilities, where we have access, where we have close proximity to other commercial nodes, which we do here. We also have goals and policies related to affordable housing. And so, you know, if we're moving land out of residential to commercial, you know, there could be less land for residential. However, our map does show this as the future use for commercial. D, the proposed zone change is compatible with the established land use patterns surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land suitability, impacts on the environment, density, nature of the use, traffic, aesthetics, infrastructure, property values. I mean, certainly this standard could probably go both ways, right? When we talk about the traffic impacts, we don't have a contract for more capacity. So there are challenges there, but there are conditions that go back to that site plan or that special use being approved. So we do have a financial commitment that's part of this the special approval use that they're offering. The next one is that all potential uses allowed in the zoning district are compatible. This standard we changed because they have conditioned it only for the campground. F, the change would not severely impact traffic, public facilities, utilities. This one, again, I think can go both ways, right? Like I said earlier, we do have an existing situation on our roadway that has contributed to user dissatisfaction, I guess, with the road. And we do have challenges in terms of us approaching our limit when it comes to contractual capacity. G, the rezoning would constitute and create an isolated or unplanned district. It would not. This is designated for commercial in the master plan. H, the change of the district boundaries is consistent to existing uses and construction on the site would meet the dimensional regulations. The future special approval use would have to meet all of our site plan standards, all of the special use standards. One of the members of the public mentioned, Michael mentioned the administrative code standard of 1.5 parking spaces. We can get into that with the special approval use, but regardless, that the proposed use would have to meet any state, local, federal rules. And whether there was a mistake in the original zoning classification, there was not a mistake. And then whether there's adequate other land to accommodate the proposed use. Campgrounds are allowed in the agricultural district, and certainly, you know, there's probably differing opinions there, right? Maybe that use does make more sense where we have less population. Some might say that use makes sense where we have access to higher capacity roads, where we have utilities, where we're close to the city centers. So that's something for the planning commission to talk about. So I'll let you continue to deliberate on this conditional rezoning. We did provide a draft motion document, which references the conditions that were offered by the applicant. Just a reminder that we cannot modify those offers. The applicant can willingly modify them here at the meeting, but we cannot ask for those changes directly. And this is a recommendation to the township board. So whether you recommend approval, denial, it still goes to the township board and they still make the final decision. You could also postpone the decision if you need, you know, more information, or you have other requests that are not able to be met today.
All right. Well, thank you. So now we will open it up to commissioners, and I'm sure there's plenty to say.
I'm happy to start.
Okay.
You know, again, looking at all this material that was presented from the last meeting and what is being presented now, I would request more denial. And the reason for that, and the reason why I don't believe this is the right thing to do, is that I do believe conditions have changed since this plan was created back in 2016. We've had greater development along the Blue Star, especially from exit 41 down to Clearbrook, which does in fact create a problem with traffic and now and potentially noise and the safety of our residents and our visitors who come to this township. So I do see that things have changed. We have an impact of traffic, public facilities, which has been recognized in regards to our capacity, other utilities possibly that we haven't even discussed in regards to the sewer. And as I look, is that there may be an issue with natural characteristics that we see in this area. And there, as much as we think that we're going to preserve trees, but well, that's going to be mighty difficult to do. Also, you know, I have a trouble with thinking that as you look at our current zoning and the future land map, that it is an R1 and a C1, and it is appropriately, as we look at these maps, you know, that's land is appropriate. They're asking for 11 plus acres to change from residential to commercial, and realizing that we do have an issue with housing, even though I know the applicant said, well, we can make now, instead of being a workforce area, now they're saying they're using the term affordable housing, that other people can go into that hotel. Well, I don't think so. I don't think that fits with what we thought in regard to thinking attainable housing for our workforce in both Douglas Township and the city. So I struggle with that if I heard that correctly from the applicant, is that other people would be able to use, it's not a workforce, it's not your workforce.
No,
It's other workforce.
it is our workforce. Yeah,
Only for you people who work and are employed by AutoCamp.
that was the intention. Yes.
Boy, I didn't hear it that way, but, okay, I take that back, then, I take that back. The other is, I really think that it will change, if you think about the quiet and scenic and small town rural character of our tri-communities. Again, rezoning from R to C1, we could potentially create increased development where we take businesses from the city and out into the Blue Star, not just because of this particular area, but anywhere along the Blue Star or along our other areas where we're really removing those businesses from the cities of Douglas and Saugatuck. So I really struggle with, as I look at the both what as well as presented and the master plan, I really look at many things within that and say, maybe we should step back and say, no, this isn't the right thing to go from removing 11 acres of residential to commercial. I struggle with that.
To that point about the 11 acres of residential, my main reaction to that is this is vacant land that's been vacant the 20 years I've lived here. No one has ever proposed a residential plan for there. In and of itself, I don't even know if it's that appropriate for residential because it is on Blue Star Highway, the main economic corridor and commercial corridor of the three communities. And I think I have chaired the Economic Development Advisory Committee to the Planning Commission. And I feel like this is completely in the goals of that committee. To foster economic development. I also think on the aesthetic front, this would be a lot more attractive right off of Blue Star, if you can see it behind the berm, but even the berm itself is so much more attractive to what exists there now. And so I don't share the reservations of Commissioner Webster. I also want to mention that as far as I know, I think this is accurate, both the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Rotary Club love this idea. It's good for the hospitality industry. It's good for the economic growth of all three communities. It won't just benefit Saugatuck Township. So I think, and I also want to applaud the applicant has approached this in quite a different way than any other applicant since I've been on the Planning Commission or on the board, in terms of being here himself, presenting to us, went to Rotary Club. We've had a lot of, in the history, even before I was involved with either of these bodies, where the owner and the lead applicant never appeared. They sent representatives. So I think, to me, that says a lot. And I also believe, I think it's really important. I'm sure, I'm guessing, but I would imagine the process was a lot tougher to approve this type of project in Martha's Vineyard or in Joshua Tree, California. And I think we've been very tough. I think the conditions we've added are exemplary. And we didn't approve in November. We said, come back with more. And it seems to me that the applicant has worked very, very hard to get to the point we're at today. I also want to applaud again our manager, Mr. DeFranco, since our last meeting, that very important meeting with the road commission that our chair attended with Mr. DeFranco and our engineer, that happened so quickly. Those kind of things never happened so fast before in the township. And I think it's important, it was an important step because we are in a new age and there are going to be more development applications. Some will like it and some we won't. And again, just to underscore, it's been said over and over, it's in our materials. It's consistent with the master plan. completely consistent with the master plan. And I hope we all bear those things in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
I struggle with this one, because I was with the attainable housing with Denise, so we talk a lot about additional housing in the area. But on the other hand, I think the particular R1 section along this Alton's commercial property seems a little bit of a, an aberration. And I think it would probably be more effective to bring it all together under C1. And I think it would be much more efficient regardless of who goes in and does anything with it. It's not to have this little pocket of residential, which to John's point, I'm not sure it'd be very desirable anyway. It's surrounded by all that commercial property. So I'm tend to lean toward this is probably a good thing to kind of straighten up that zoning properties in that area. I would say yes.
Well, I'll go at it a different way. I think this as a project has merit. I have two major problems. One is I don't want to approve anything until I know we have a contract for the extra sewer capacity. I don't want to approve this subject to him getting it. I would rather him, because it's more than just this parcel. So I would vote to postpone it for at least 90 days, because it's going to take Mr. DeFranco that much time, because they have to deal with his negotiations, and then after negotiations, he gets with our engineer, they get with their engineers, they go back to their political boards, they have a meeting, they have discussion, they advise their people, and they go back to negotiating again, and then you get down to the business of drafting a contract for that purchase and how you value that. And I would like to have that in place before we move ahead on either one of these, because I think that's overarching, more important, and really affects what else we might look at approving going from this date forward. The second thing is, I'm not unmindful of what the people along Sanctuary are saying about the additional noise. Now, there is a parcel that separates the Sanctuary from Blue Star. It's presently has a property sign that says it for sale, and that's through Signature Associates. And Tom Elhart is the agent who's advertised on the sign. However, if you go to the Signature Associates website and look at available properties, this isn't on there. Because it's the big question, how big is it and how much they want for it? I don't know that. I have heard a report that that is owned by the same person who is proposing the sale to AutoCamp. I don't know that for certain, but if in 90 days, they could come back and say, if this is approved, that this area will be granted a conservation easement, so it can't be developed right next to Sanctuary. Because as it stands right now, depending on how large that is, that could be sold. It's already zoned commercial, and that could be your next McDonald's. We don't want that. So at least I would like it to come back in 90 days. If that was included as a buffer for the Sanctuary, and we're going to get the extra sewer capacity, and there's some road improvements, bearing in mind what Michael said is that we know as soon as this opens, it's only going to get worse on Blue Star before it gets better. But if they're putting up 200,000 towards that, plus we're getting additional sewer capacity. And if we turn this down, the part of this that is commercial could be built into a hotel or other development right now that we would have no control over. Having said all that, I can't do anything until I see the written contract in front of me, because I don't want to approve anything subject to them maybe being able to negotiate it, or maybe being able to buy from a private developer, or maybe a Lake Town. I would want to see it in writing, ready to go before I can move forward on this. If they can't get that, then I think we go back to what Ms. Webster said, that we'll have to deny it if for no other reason we don't have the capacity legally.
So I can speak to the property across the street along the sanctuary. Mr. Van Horn approached me approximately 3 months ago or so, maybe 2 to 3 months ago, and had indicated that he had that property under contract. So I think he doesn't own it. At least at that time, he had it under contract. And he had mentioned to me that there may be the possibility of that becoming a conservation easement, or it was proposed to me like it would be a benefit to sanctuary as a buffer, to maintain that the landscape in there. He even mentioned that he thought that it was that he liked. He liked the trees there. He thought it'd be a benefit to auto camp as well as sanctuary. So I did have a conversation.
If that comes to pass, but once again, it's just like what I said about the extra sewer capacity, that's got to be put in writing with a legal description, and that, if upon approval, they get a buffer that's in writing. I mean, an oral representation is just that.
Yeah.
If it's something that they're going to put together and present to us, that strengthens their case.
You just asked about ownership.
Oh, okay.
I pass that on.
Daniel, quick question for you. I want to make sure I understood what you said correctly. Did you say that we're nearly, as a township, we're nearly at our capacity now for wastewater?
That's correct. Yeah, we have about 30,000 gallons per day left, but you're not allowed to go up to that full 90,000 gallons per day. You can, I think, believe the way the contract is written, or the way that it will be revised, because we're working on a revision to the sewer contract right now. We can use only 75% of that capacity before penalties are instituted. And there's some financial penalties. They're not significant, but the bigger penalty is no more connections to the sewer system. So
So it sounds like we, regardless of auto camp, so again, this is not an auto camp issue. We need to negotiate for the available additional contractual capacity, right?
I agree.
That's just going to happen regardless of whatever we agree on or don't agree on here today.
It's a pressing issue, yes.
And then the other side of the coin, I want to make sure I heard this right too, is that whatever amount of capacity that auto camp is going to use from this proposed future additional capacity, they're going to pay for every gallon.
That's my
Yeah,
understanding.
an escrow fund, right?
That's my understanding.
Yes. With that said, I'm in, personally, I'm in full support of auto camp and making this change. And I think this is going to be good for our community. And from what I have seen from personal representation here and some online research that I've done, I haven't called people throughout the country and asked what their auto camp experience was, but I have done some pretty thorough online investigation. I think this is kind of an amazing opportunity. When I look at the road and what is going to be preserved, and I think of, well, what would it look like if it was this kind of business or that kind of business? Nothing else that I can imagine would look that preserved and that pristine. It's in their best interest to not remove mature trees. Every tree they cut down hurts their brand because it creates more of a scorched earth aesthetic, which is exactly opposed to what they're all about. So I think it's an amazing opportunity. And I think we should be, frankly, I can't speak for the rest of you, but I'm grateful that we have this opportunity on the table. And we have problems with Blue Star now. And we'll have problems. We had them yesterday, we have them today, we're gonna have them tomorrow. We gotta solve that. We can't be afraid of new opportunities because we have this problem. We have to solve the problems one at a time and not bundle them together into a giant hairball that causes paralysis, which is too often the case with big challenging problems, is that we stack them all up on each other and we don't move on any of them. I say we boldly move forward on all of them, solve them. Thank you.
I agree a little bit with everything that everyone has said so far. I think I tend to agree more with you, that we do need to look to the future, and every improvement that we make now is just gonna make things better all the way around for the community. And I would much rather see this than, 8 driveways for 8 different businesses that are sitting right on the road. I mean, this is gonna be the most beautiful thing that you will see across from your residence or your development. Yes, the traffic is a problem. We all know that, but it sounds like we're moving forward and trying to make that better. And I do have a question for you. You don't know exactly where all the sites are going to be or how they're going to be situated because of the trees and the root systems. Would you consider lessening the density if it means would you consider cutting down a tree to put one in, or would you consider lessening the density or eliminating a few sites if that will save trees?
Yeah, I mean, if we're in a situation where we're losing something that's really precious, you can certainly cut back and be like, okay, we're not gonna do 112, we'll do 111 and 10, and this cluster of trees over here, we wanted to go in that triangle on the very south side, for example, has probably a larger concentration of trees, where it's like, that's a challenge you want to get into. We originally looked at that for parking, and we just decided it's just too much. So I think, something we would definitely consider as we're out there.
And when you do look at the aerial views, it's rather bare in the middle anywhere where most of your development is.
Yeah, there are some rarer spots for sure. We did a tree study that shows where those 6-inch, 12-inch big trees are. So we do have a pretty good idea of where they are. Parking is probably the most challenging you want to condense and not spread it out. So unfortunately, that's just sort of the nature of our world. But beyond that, yeah, we tried to work our way around it, including how the berms go and stuff like that. So.
Can I ask a berm question?
No, go ahead.
How tall? I forgot to ask this.
We probably do a minimum of 8 feet, and that's primarily because of the sound from the highway emanating out. We're pretty concerned that anything shorter is really just sort of like you put your head over and the sound comes right by, because even trucks reflecting off the trees and stuff. Yep. So 8 feet minimum, 10 if we can, just depending on slope and landscaping. So that's kind of how we're looking at it.
That's very significant.
Yeah.
From an acoustic barrier standpoint. People think that trees block sound. They don't.
They don't.
They refract sound and they garble sound, but they don't bring the decibel level down. When you build a berm, you stop sound.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I guess, as far as the rezoning goes, in relation to the question of the R1, reverting over to C1, I guess I truly don't, that being a commercial corridor, it seems to be consistent with the use, it's consistent with the master plan. I don't see any real concerns from that standpoint. I look at the R1, when we talk about, I heard mentioning like housing and I don't know if affordable housing was used. At the end of the day, I mean, those R1 lots, they get developed, and I think the ones that are along the pond out there now, they're going for $200,000 a piece. And I just don't see that being affordable housing. So if it reverts back to C1 and it's something, that's then used preserve some area and I do think it's actually a good use for the area compared to or considering what potentially could be put there. I think this is actually a better solution, or better, thing that, project that could come forward than a hotel or whatever it would, to meet that C1 use and whatever else they could come in with. So I really wish Chad was here because I'm curious to ask him about, what he had brought up, because I also hear, some of the concerns from the sanctuary residents and with having that additional buffer with that commercial property and something that he had mentioned regarding, making that property possibly a conservation easement to benefit auto camp as well as the sanctuary residents. And I really wish he was here to speak to that, but because that is something that's a question that I really wanted to have answered tonight.
Dave, can you help me understand where that is, this area that you're talking about? Is it over here?
Yeah, maybe just a little further away.
Is there?
Yeah, if that's sanctuary, it's right there. Yeah, it's right.
Is that
Correct.
it? Okay, thank you.
So,
Yeah, sanctuary.
David, is it not the land that runs between the two entrance, the entrance and exit from sanctuary?
Yeah.
It's like the donut hole.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's that land of trees in between their two entrances.
So can we, and I don't know, can we make that a condition?
No.
We cannot.
Nope.
I can propose it, right?
You can.
Yes, right, the applicant.
You could propose it, yes. Are you willing to do it?
I have to have a call, Chad.
No.
It's not my money.
That's currently zone commercial.
That is currently zone commercial.
Heavily wooded.
It's very heavily wooded. It butts up right to the back of sanctuary. It's a very odd shape. To where I'm not entirely sure what you could do with it commercially. But that's not, that's not for me to decide.
Here's a picture.
I mean, it completely blocks the sanctuary homes view, the view from Blue Star of their homes. When you see it, it's
So important. So
That works both
This
ways.
is sanctuary, this is the property,
Got it.
and then this is the development.
And are you implying just theoretically that you might be able to and willing to turn that into a conservation easement?
Well, that's what was mentioned to me from Chad.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm kind of texting him now. So
And that's a significant concession here.
And he has said that to others, but I mean, as you said,
Yeah.
there's no signed paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's
But-
the difficulty, and
I
if
know.
it was here and making
I
a
know.
representation. I mean, that makes a difference, because even if we do approve this tonight, it's still subject to whatever Daniel does. I would prefer what Daniel does before we act on it. But if other members are ready to approve this, subject to that, and only when we call a vote, will that happen. But
They could probably also offer that condition at the board, before the board meeting,
well,
potentially. but-
fine, but unless we have it here, it's hard for me to support this without that additional buffer for sanctuary.
Dave, I'd like to get a little clearer on the sewer capacity. If auto camp goes in and we don't get additional capacity from anybody else in the neighborhood, does auto camp push us to or over the limit? Or is it like really close, or is there still some room
Well,
left there?
unless the township obtains that additional capacity. That's one of the contingencies here, so if we do not obtain the additional sewer capacity that auto camp would pay for. This goes away.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood that. Okay.
So that should be your primary.
Well, I see.
Right.
So those are, I had the two concerns, the buffer and that. I would prefer to see that deal done before we move forward on this. Only because we have negotiations with other municipalities that are sensitive, private, and have their own set of actors working. And whether that gets done or not, or how soon, I would prefer not to have AutoCamp calling Daniel once a week. Got it yet? So I would like to, leave him a freer hand. But that being said, I still have the issue on the buffer.
But
And
Dave, AutoCamp, if I understand this, they can't proceed without this sewer capacity issue being addressed. Is that
that's
correct?
correct.
Okay, so I mean, it's like, we
And-
can't approve it until.
That's just it.
Can't say.
Regarding this rezoning request,
Oh, I see.
we
I see.
like, if
Okay.
this gets approved,
Yeah, yeah.
it is contingent upon, all the things that are listed in here.
I got
And
you.
if those contingencies aren't met, then the rezoning reverts back to what it is today. Right.
Okay.
And as someone said, or more than someone said earlier, we need the sewage capacity for anything,
Correct. Yeah.
and it's in the works. So we have to hope for the best there. Otherwise,
Capacity.
development
exists.
stops. I mean, even if it's, I don't know.
I will resist my sarcastic inferences.
Did you hear from?
Good.
Nadia, I was just gonna say, the idea of the condition too is just we still have a lot of work to do on the site plan and things going forward. And which is, that can take, even though we've submitted it, I'm sure there'll be comments and back iterations. It's gonna take 2 or 3 months. So to defer us, and then we have another 3 months, it just sort of, there's, I know not your issue, but there's economic consequences on our side,
understand.
stuff like that, so.
Okay, I'm not in favor of this, but as I hear this comments is, I have some issues with the rezoning request and some questions. First of all, we use the word campground. However, the applicant has presented to us, this is a boutique campground, and whether, in fact, throughout the documents, that it's very clear that this is a boutique campground. And so within that, the zoning is, anytime we hear the word campground, should the boutique occur beforehand or in any legal document, it's like, okay, we know that campground is boutique, and that is very different than any other campground that comes around.
And
So
it's vague.
I think we need to make sure that we understand boutique and whether we need to define that.
Yes.
Help with the
I
applicant.
thought that was addressed.
No, it's only said once and
It says it can't be a yogi or a kale.
Yeah, but I think we,
Say what can't.
whatever, we need to make sure it's a boutique. And the second question I have, does this say after, you do all this, but after 3 or 4 years and you pull out and so forth, are you going to restore that land? If nobody else comes forward to buy that, are you going to then restore that land so they can go back to residential, understanding the infrastructure is not going to change? But are you going to remove the airstream? Are you going to remove those items so that it can be used as an R1? If you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, can I address both questions?
Yes, you may.
Okay, well, first of all, in terms of boutique campground, what that refers to is we're trying to distinguish ourselves from the Yogi Bears and the KOAs.
I understand that.
And so the things we put in the conditions are what makes it boutique. So the fact that we have centralized parking, you're walking to your unit, kind of like a boutique hotel, that was the only intention of the word boutique, is just to distinguish ourselves from the other guys, and which I think we are different. So I think that in the zoning restrictions we placed on it in terms of the parking, the uses, the formation of the site plan, that was sort of defining whether that's really the term boutique. I think that's laid out to say, it's restricting us, like, it's gonna look like this, and anything else, the next guy is gonna come back to you. So your question on, do we restore it? So that becomes a market issue, right? So let's just say AutoCamp goes belly up in 4 years and like, oh, this is awful, stupid idea. And we want to sell the property. We're going to want to get every piece of cash out of it we can and sell the airstreams, which are very reusable, very valuable on the market. So all that would be removed, yes. And we would want to make it accommodated to the next use. So if the next highest and best use was residential, We want to make sure that we get the most value out of it we can, because we've lost so much money already. It's like, let's get as much as we can get back. So.
Question for you, are there concrete pads underneath that you try?
No, we have done that in some locations because of soils, or someone made a bad decision, because you don't necessarily need to put that much cement under. But most of it is there's a foundation or compacted DG or whatever to support the wheelbase so it doesn't, settle over time. No.
So Lene, is that clear in the conditions that what he just said in regards to? Do we need to make sure or present something so that he has stated that is in fact
Under
it
the
will be
SAU,
removed so that we reverse
Under
back?
the SAU.
yeah, if you look under the SAU,
Okay.
the SAU defines the use.
Well, that's, yes,
Right.
but removing things, if you were to go back.
Reclamation.
I mean, we can't, we can, I mean, that's sort of a general market force. It's like telling the next guy, like, if he wants to sell his house with his wrecked car in the yard, he can sell it. The next day we'll clean it out. But you know what I mean, so it's like telling us like how to market our property, because maybe the next guy wants, maybe part of the deal is you take the Airstreams and you sell them. And the guy's like, yeah, I want to do that. I'll make money off that. So I'd rather not put restrictions about how we deliver the property back. I don't think we're going to leave the property in some dilapidated form and just say, see you later, because people come in and steal the Airstreams and remove it for us. So it's a little bit.
I'm just really concerned a little bit about reclamation because we've had some issues regards to some of our.
Yeah, but an Airstream is a lot
Well, I
different than.
know, but it's land. It's land that's now not usable as you say, and it just sits there. And
Like
then
it
we don't
does
have-
now.
Well, it's better than,
Unused.
that is better than having.
Well, we
an
would
Airstream.
also have,
Not necessarily.
I'm thinking, seeing-
if it became unsafe, I mean, we do have zoning enforcement, right? If things become dilapidated, if there become, issues of building materials.
Or vermin or whatever.
Yeah, I've never, in my real estate experience, I'm not the most experienced person, but I've done it for 30 years, I've never had that requirement imposed upon us unless the only case that was done was when someone did a gravel pit and said, at the end of your gravel pit and you're mining that for your site, you gotta restore it. That's the only time I've ever seen that.
I would bring that.
We've had that.
Bring that one up.
Yeah, but I wouldn't, but it never had imposed, I've never had someone say, hey, if your houses all go to the ghetto and no one likes the houses you built, you gotta scrape them at the end. It's like a little bonding capacity thing.
Related to what we've been discussing, you may have said this in your first appearance before us, and I apologize if you did. AutoCamp, what's the oldest site that AutoCamp's been operating?
Russian River Valley is probably the oldest. And then I think we opened up in Yosemite. I'm not, the timing of those two, I'm not totally clear.
But that was what year for either?
5-6 years ago at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you been with them all the time?
Yeah, I joined in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have they ever opened and operated a site that subsequently was closed and or something?
Not in the current format. So that one of the initial programs we did was the experiment was in Santa Barbara, California, and they had a few Airstreams. And they're like, oh, this works. Let's move those and, we'll actually do formal sites in campgrounds. So that's the only thing they've ever changed.
Okay. That's sort of the test ground.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, but yeah.
No, it's relevant. We haven't asked that, I don't think, so.
Well, since we have one of our commissioners get up, why don't we take a, just
Wait for him to come
No,
back.
we'll
Just wait for him to come back.
No, I didn't think we could do that. No, sorry.
He's still in form, so we can move on.
that's true.
Just walk over to the table.
So, well, I think at this point, I mean, I think we're ready to move on the rezoning request. Unless anybody else has any other comments, and so we'll. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'd make one, but I have no idea how to say it. Relative to the conditions.
Well, we have,
So,
there's draft motion here.
yeah, but does it refer to the
Yes,
conditions?
It does.
it's bold.
In fact, Lene did make a comment
It's pulled
in
up
here that, that we should. Make sure you
Oh, I see.
include the reference to the.
And is this approval to,
The recommendation to the township board.
no, I understand that, but is this auto camp or outdoor lodgings?
Rezoning.
Rezoning, it's just rezoning.
It's just.
Well, it
rezoning.
says, I'm sorry, it says motion to approve the blank, the project name and address. Is that not necessary?
Take it from the,
Well, I take it
From
from the
your,
conditional
agenda.
rezoning request. Yeah.
Just want to
The auto camp
verify.
rezoning.
Okay, because there's, all right. I'm gonna take a stab and you can help me out. I would like to make a motion to approve the auto camp rezoning project for parcels 0320-003-04100 and 0320-003-06318 partial rezoning and 0320-003-07100 full rezoning as presented with the conditions as per the offer from AutoCamp dated January 5th, 2023, page 4 of attachment A.
That's
What's
all
that?
in
I'm
there.
sorry, what am I
That's
missing?
all in.
That's in there, okay.
Support?
We've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? The only thing I'd like to say is as far as the board goes, because regardless, this is going to the board,
Right.
that I would really appreciate if the board would bring up the possibility of a condition to, well, hopefully, Mr. Hess will bring a condition that that property on the other side of the street along the sanctuary that
East side,
would be moved into a conservation easement
Okay, it's a good point.
or similar,
So you're not adding that condition, that's just a discussion item.
just a discussion.
So you said we can't. do
We
that.
cannot, I'm just
Yeah.
clarifying,
Just
we're
a
not adding
discussion
a
item.
condition. Yeah, there are only 9 conditions from the applicant.
Because John's a board member, I was just
Right.
requesting.
And as you all know, what we vote today is a recommendation. The board can make any changes it may choose to, as long as it is about the issue of the rezoning these properties. Okay. So, good point, Dave.
Is there any other discussion at this point?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Butler,
No.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Helmrich,
Yes.
Mr. Eiley,
Yes.
Mr. Stannis,
Yes.
Webster, no. Worth, Mr. Worth,
Yes.
5-2.
Okay. Motion passes. Okay, so then we move on to B, old business. This will be regarding the special approval use. With the conceptual site plan and the 3 same part, 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels that we just discussed. Renee, probably, you have anything
Yeah.
additional to add or?
I guess hearing some comments. Well, first, sorry for the spelling errors and the capitalized stuff, but didn't pick up on the subject. The applicant did clarify the items that were remaining from the public hearing that we had back in November. I do want to reiterate, he did mention that the workforce housing, it would be up to 7 rooms to house paid workers of auto camp, but not necessarily like during their shifts. It's not like they're gonna, like a doctor who's on call and they're sleeping at the hospital. No, they would rent one of these units and they might be full or part-time employees of auto camp. But what I heard is that there's a direct connection between who is leasing those units and their employment with auto, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We included the comments related to the traffic improvements, the conditional rezoning. You clarified the alcohol consumption, that it's a non-smoking facility, including tobacco, e-cigarettes, and cannabis. Amplification of music. We included hours of operation and the location of where that music could be. We had a question about the neighboring pond use. They clarified that no guests would have access to the adjacent pond. We heard the conversation about the capacity limits of our sewer system. I went through the conditions for special approval use and also reviewed the conditions for campgrounds specifically and found that they met those conditions. I do want to mention, and I think as if you move towards the recommendations in here and the 21 items, I did want to include a few things. Specifically that under number 19, I wanted to reference section 40-737 and section 40-693. 4737 are our special use standards for campgrounds, and 40-693 are our general standards. Just wanted to call those out specifically, even though we have the blanket statement about local, county, state, federal requirements. We did hear that the administrative code for Michigan has some language about campgrounds and 1.5 parking spaces. I would like some clarification from the township attorney on that and the applicability. I did look it up on my phone. I typically try not to use my phone during our meetings, but I was curious about that because our ordinance says 1 per campground space. And they have provided 1 per campground space plus an additional 20 for employees. So if it were to be 1.5 at the state level, we have to meet what our state mandate is. We can't be, we can request 2 or more than 1.5, but we can't have less. So I think that's an important clarification. I do think number 19 addresses that, because if that is required, then they're going to have to provide that, but that will change their site plan.
Lenny, excuse me, if in fact that's the case, would then they have to present that a new site plan to us before we would move forward?
So the condition is that they will come to us with a detailed site plan. What we have today is a concept plan. So I'm just making sure it's, I mean,
So we would know that before you would come forward with a full site
yes,
plan.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like number 13, the use and detailed site plan shall meet the groundwater overlay. I think number 19, you know, or number 19 covers us that, you know, they have to comply with our zoning standards. You could add number 22 or change number 21 that says, you know, applicant shall submit a detailed site plan for review and approval, just so it's abundantly clear, but that is the intent. We don't have, you know, the detailed site plan. They couldn't pull any permits based on the concept plan that you have in front of you. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Can you explain what that ADA model unit is?
Yeah, so the Airstreams you have unfortunately can't service wheelchairs, so we had to introduce another cabin type that would accommodate, would be ADA compliant. So we have some of those cabins that are ADA compliant, so it's effectively a park model RV. I don't have a sample, the picture of it is a very sort of contemporary looking, kind of slick looking unit. In fact, so slick that people have demanded in other sites to also stay in them. But it's basically, it's a park model RV cabinet with a wheelchair ramp access to get in.
I couldn't understand.
Yeah, it's okay.
I have another question in regards to the access road. Will the detailed site plan that we are going to request indicate that that access, that is it a private road, and so that nobody else, so my sand pit is not using that road as they are right now?
So you're talking, there's a northwest road in the corner of our property that we're proposing.
No, it's the one that comes off on Blue Star, no?
No, this one?
Yeah,
Oh, the
that-
private access road, yeah. So.
And the sand pit won't be using that, they're not gonna have huge trucks coming out that road.
Well, the sand pit will be able to continue to finish their work. By the time they're done, we'll be opening right after. We don't want them operating either. So by the time they're done, we'll be opening right after them. So they have a permit right now to finish the work and haul that sand off. But after that, yes, they'll be not allowed to use it.
And you'll be the only one using that road.
There is access to, it provides access to the Van Horn property. So I'm not sure what he's gonna do with his property, but he would come in a separate application to use that as a private drive for residents or something else.
So he would have to come in.
Yes.
Yes, he does not have approval to do any residential development where the current mounds are. That was a condition of his special use, that we were not granting the right to do any residential. You'd have to come back for site condominium or land. I don't even think he has any land divisions left there, but he'd have to come in for that. At which time then we would review the road and the access and the private road requirements.
Okay, second thing is, I'm a little concerned with the pond. I know that you say in here that your guests will not have access to the adjacent pond. But, you know, without appropriate barrier, I know people, they're gonna go across it. I don't care if you have an 8-foot berm. They're gonna walk over there, and have you thought about the liability associated with the closeness of that pond?
We can't control what people do off of our site. Now, I know there's a proximity issue, totally understand and agree. I think from a liability standpoint, I think that would be on Van Horn to fence out, because he has that issue now. People could drive up in the woods and park and go swimming. So I think that's be something he would have to deal with. But from our site perspective, we're not gonna notify people of it, encourage people of it, tell them, hey, by the way, there's a pond over there, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, go swimming. That's not gonna happen. So, but I'm not sure we can control people from, even if we put a fence up, they can go around and go swimming in theory. But hopefully they're gonna want to use the beaches and other locations. Yeah.
We're concerned with that.
No water in it.
Got a question.
Yeah, there's
Maybe I missed it. What's your projected, if everything goes well, what's your projected opening date?
If everything went perfectly well and every contractor and architect would be 2024 in the perfect, we ideally open around April and May before the season hits. So we have a little bit of a warm up. That'd be the
A
ideal.
little over a year from now.
Yeah.
The other things, if anyone's taking notes for conditions, I did hear at the last meeting that event, like if there was a wedding there, an event would be for like the guests and attendees would be overnight guests at Auto Camp only, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I think that could be added. I also saw that sites shall be limited to 2 adults and 1 to 2 youth only, correct? So that could be added. And that you wouldn't have like day use of your facility, correct? Like people couldn't pay $20 and come and use your pool and your sauna.
Correct, yeah.
Correct.
All the amenities are intended for our guests. And also just stepping back to your previous comment, we wouldn't want to limit to 2 adults and 2 kids because sometimes the Airstreams are equipped with a fold-out couch to have a 3rd adult. Could be a 19-year-old and suddenly they're an adult. So just want to make sure that we're flexible in how we run those things.
Is there a maximum number of people per site?
Right now there is not, and we do have, some of the cabins have bunk beds and things, so I just want to, they could have 3-4 people on a weekend if they, if someone packed it in. So we haven't imposed maximums. It's kind of our business model to be able to accommodate a few of those bigger families now and then, so.
But it's only 1 car per unit.
Correct, 1 car per week.
Maybe that's how you want to write it. And then amenities for overnight guests only.
Question for you, and as I was reading through, will the site have a LEED certification?
We have looked at, we're starting to incorporate LEED checkboxes per se. So there's two things, there's LEED sites, and then there's LEED certification for buildings.
Yeah.
And there are components of both which we're trying to meet. We haven't gone through the process of actually trying to get certified, is make it closer to certifiable. There are a lot of things you have to do to get there. And we just haven't quite gotten there, but we, you know, for like LEED sites is recycling existing buildings is a huge credit as an example. You know, low impact development techniques, taking the mulchings from your trees and spreading them on the site versus taking them on, things like that, we're definitely taking a look at.
Well, that's why I asked, because it's a huge undertaking.
It is,
and
yeah.
It would be very admirable if you were able to obtain that.
Yes.
I mean, that has to do with your dark sky compliance.
Yeah, yeah.
And all of that. So
And then easier 6 months ago, when interest rates were lower, but we're.
you know, there's a little hard benefits. So as far as the, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask you, but you're gonna try to be able to sell alcohol through the clubhouse.
Yes,
And that will only be open to the auto camp renters.
yes,
Right.
yeah, only guests are allowed to, or hang out in the clubhouse and get beer and alcohol.
How do you handle guests and friends of guests?
Oh, you mean if they invite them in for the day?
Yeah.
You know, we've never had that issue, and I'm sure someone said, hey, Jimmy, come over, meet us at the clubhouse today. It's never been a problem, or, you know, usually people are going out for the most part, and then they come back at night for a beer or something, but it usually, we just haven't really had that issue. We never had overcrowding or, you know, like, hey, you just invited 5 people over to hang out. It's never happened. If it did happen, we, you know, our staff is trained in addressing those kind of issues. They come from national hotel chains where they're trained to deal with, you know, de-escalate situations, whether it's a drunk person or someone who's abusing the rules or things like that.
Speaking to your the staffing, do you have security personnel on staff?
No, we don't have security personnel. But you know, the staff is trained in emergency management, so if there is a security issue, you know, who do you call? The fire department, police, things like that. They know CPR. You know, they're trained in that respect, but we've never had like a guy sitting there in security. Just frankly haven't had the issue. Typically the people we attract are not inclined to be security issues. I don't know how to say that, just because we're not renting it out for 25 a night. So we just haven't encountered that problem.
Nicely put.
But you do have overnight staff.
Yes, staff is there 24/7.
always staff.
24/7 and on call too. So.
And one last comment that when we had talked about another project that had just come through regarding the brewery, there was discussion of your narrative spoke of entertainment, maybe having, you know, music, and we had it says that it would be cut off at 10 p.m. I know there was the planning commission here, we kind of pushed to have it be 9 o'clock I mean, there was some feedback from the residents in the area that would have liked to have seen it cut off at 9 o'clock as opposed to 10 o'clock. Yeah. Is that something I know we can't propose that.
I would take that, and I don't think that's a huge issue. Typically our entertainment is acoustic based. I mean, they might be plugged in, but it's like a singer-songwriter on a guitar is typically the entertainment. We're not housing bands and things like that. So.
And that was a similar situation with the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm conscious of having more restrictions, like, oh, it's 9:05, you know, shame on you, but yeah, we're generally very low key in how that entertainment is done.
So does that mean you're okay with 9 o'clock?
If I have to.
I just have a question about something that you brought up, you'll have a convenience store for your guests. There is something in our zoning ordinances that's in what is it, section 4736, number 2.
That it should be near the
That
road.
public has to be able to access any commercial enterprise, i.e. a convenience store, they have to have access to it.
No, that's a service to the guests.
Pardon me?
It doesn't
I'm
make a
just-
difference if, because it's a service to the guests.
Yeah,
It's like
I'm
a
just curious
hotel
about
that's
others.
got the, you get your aspirin, you can buy it over here.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that little.
That's what it's really meant for. Okay, I bought a iPhone cord at the hotel I'm staying at today. That's really the intent, is just like supplies. It's not meant to. It's, well, A, it's not open to the public. I don't know if that matters. Maybe that's where the.
It's not accessible. to the public,
Yeah, it's not
but I just-
accessible to
There's a
public.
section that says it has to be.
It's got, it says no commercial enterprises shall be permitted to operate in the park, except that a convenience goods shopping building may be provided adjacent to the park and as close as possible to the street, providing public access to the park. So it's the street. Close to the street. It doesn't say that the convenience store has to be publicly
Okay.
accessible.
Right.
Well. Got a question, it's kind of, not appropriate, but. So spring of 2024, it's target date for your open. And Danielle's just wondering how much progress you guys could make with the road commission on these initial conceptual remedies. Is that time frame compatible? I know it's unfair to ask you that, but it's off the top of your head, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, if we focused on that intersection, I wouldn't say it's totally crazy. I mean, I think that we'd get a report done by 2023, like by the summer. And then I think at that point, we could start exploring, these kind of, yeah, what Lene is describing as these kind of like, not temporary, but like test installations that, affect traffic patterns. I think that it could be reasonable to see something by that point.
Okay.
Well, is there any other discussion at this point? Commissioners, no? All right. At this point, we'll entertain a motion. This, a motion to approve motion to approve or deny, or whatever it is, Renee. But I'm open to a motion, regarding the, item number B for the auto camp special approval use with the conceptual site plan shown here regarding the 4 properties listed.
So moved,
Well,
just like you said.
doesn't work.
I think we're adding a condition.
Do you want me to go through those again?
Yes, we probably should.
Okay. So I was suggesting adding to number 19, reference to section 40-737. Section 40-693. As well as all local, county, state, and federal requirements. And then number 21. And it changes to event and attendees, events. And event attendees shall be overnight guests only. Number 22, amenities shall be for overnight guests only. Number 23, site shall be limited to 1 car only. Number 24, use shall be staff 24/7. And then back at the front, number 8 was that quiet hours, which sort of seemed a little fuzzy from the applicant. Little hesitant to change it to 9, but it was discussed, so I wanna, whoever makes the motion. That's where that one resides, whether you, however you wanna deal with that.
It does say amplified music. I mean. Guess they could turn their amp off at 9 o'clock.
Well, that, and then plus they have an 8-foot berm around Blue Star, drowning out most of the problem, but.
I'd suggest keeping it 10 to 7.
I mean, just to
Still light
balance
at
out,
10.
if I can make a comment too, just, you know, are other businesses having the same requirement? And if that's the color where you'd like to go, such as the brewery or somebody else, I think that'd be fair, but it's just us, not as fair.
That's the only reason why I mentioned it, because it was a concern to the community, and they brought it up last time, and we did.
What's the cutoff time for outdoor music and the spectators? I believe it's 10.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think he just wants to go home then.
Who? I have no problem leaving it at 10. Did you have other?
No.
I believe we were gonna add one about the need for the detailed site plan.
I did find that in here, that
Oh, it's there?
it's actually number 12.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Cool.
I know another concern that we haven't really talked about are crossings for the pedestrians and bicycles. Would we want to add that in as a condition that there are marked and signed crossings at Main Drive?
I think they exist because of the truck traffic for the,
It is.
It is,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You have a motion, you have a motion
You
on the
started it.
floor,
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Ward.
started it.
you started it.
I don't know how to finish.
Oh, yeah, we'll help you.
Okay,
I guess with the conditions.
okay. So I move to approve the special use application for auto camp with all the stated conditions. And in addition to events and attendees shall be overnight guests only. And that amenities for overnight guests be for those guests only. And the site shall be limited to 1 car per trailer occupant only. And the staff, the auto camp staff should, auto camp should staff that site 24/7. Did I get everything?
Do we need to add your comment in regards to, as conditions of approval included conformance with sections 46? As I look at your,
Sorry, blank. Yep, she's got it here. So, so where these
Yeah,
apply?
just say the use shall at all times.
Oh, I see.
comply
That goes to that one. Okay.
Mhm.
The use shall apply at all times with all local, county, state, and federal requirements. 40-737, 40-693, and other standards.
and we're gonna, Lene, you mentioned this comment down here, and should we read that too? On your motion?
Here it is.
Oh,
Should
yeah, with the,
we also put that in the record?
yeah, with the planner's memorandum and the engineer's memorandum.
Yep.
Of January 10th. Yep.
Good. All right. So we need a second support.
And it's
did
one
that,
parking space per campsite.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a second on the floor, so now I'll open up for, if there's any remaining discussion or comments, if anybody has anything. No? Then we'll open up the roll call vote.
Mr. Worth,
Approve? Yes.
Mr. Stannis,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
No,
Mrs. Ground,
Yes.
Mr. Helmrich,
Yes.
Mr. Eiley,
Yes.
myself, Ms. Webster, no. Passes 5-3.
Okay. Motion carries. And so now we can move on. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate your time and actually attended your thing at Rotary too, so I. It was spitting at. It's actually great that you were reaching out to the community, kind of getting a feel for what people have to say and feedback from us. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, so going on to new business, seeing there is none. We'll go on to reports, township board update.
Okay, we've had 2 board meetings since we last met here. On January 9th, we had a special closed session to conduct a performance review for manager to Franklin. It was quite a positive review, and we did vote to increase the salary on April 14th, which is the anniversary of Donovan's employment agreement, all much deserved. We had public comment on the 11th was the regular meeting. Our county commissioner, Dean Capica, came as he always does in January, fill us in on some news at the county level, which includes there in the middle of proceeding with take any non-judicial departments out of courthouse. They are now, never been there. Treasury's there, clerks there. We'll move them out to the this county service center, which is not downtown. Let's see. We're also the governor approved. We're getting a 3rd Circuit Court judge for the county caseload and an update on broadband expansion plans. We voted to decline a request to be fiscally responsible for a septic system for the Justamere. What are they?
Justamere,
yeah, but the
storage.
we call those things storage rooms. That ended up being apartments. Anyway, out on Allegan Road, we turned that down as has been done in the past. We did approve a resolution to consider a special assessment district for 4 properties out Wiley Road to expand water to them and to instruct our engineer with moving ahead with the plan. Total cost is $146,000. That would be the SAD that the property owners would be responsible for. Let's see. Yep, that was Wiley Road. And big news, we had a bidding process. We had 6 bidders to do the building remodeling. Good. And we to award that contract to Carbon 6 Construction out of Grand Rapids. They're also currently doing an upgrade to Holland Charter Township. Total cost $765,000. And our attorney's reviewing that agreement contract. We passed a quarterly budget amendment. It was a very small one because elections ran over for some supply issue reasoning. And let's see, we granted the township manager an additional 40 hours personal time off for this year leading up to his anniversary date. And contingent on the move, we have to by law do an asbestos testing, which we passed. It's like less than $3,000. And let's see, oh, I thought I skipped something. And then I gave a report because I think this is back in December, our newly elected state representative, Joey Andrews. We have, we're in a new district now that is all Lakeshore communities. We're the northern one. It goes all the way down to New Buffalo. Don't go into the county like we used to do in the old days. So Joey and his staff had a meeting at Douglas City Hall. And because of Open Meetings Act, no more than 2 elected officials could attend from each community. Brenda Marcy and I represented the township, and it was a good hour-and-a-half meeting about all sorts of things, from traffic to critical dunes to what are the issues we'd like to see the new legislature tackle. And that's it. He swore to do these things on a regular basis. And he's been doing this up and down the other coastal towns in the district. And that is my report.
And then did I read that the next board meeting will be offsite because of construction?
Yeah, the February 8th will be, right?
All of your meetings.
Yeah, for probably 2 or 3 months.
All of them.
Planning commission too, sorry, Dan, but we'll be meeting at the high school.
Oh, really?
Yes, and they're gonna be, I believe, in person. We're We're not.
Yeah, 'cause we're in the cafeteria,
Yeah, we
so-
won't have hybrid capacity.
And then there'll be a couple special meetings, including our annual board strategy session that'll be held at the library. We're hoping it's only for 3 months, but we'll see what happens. We're starting to pack up, and Monday, the 30th is the target date to move all the furniture from that side of the building into here. So they can start working over there. So, cool. Wish us luck. Exciting.
So if I understood you right, is the planning commission will meet at the high school in February, March and April?
And June.
Oh, it's
And
true.
June.
Ooh.
Okay.
I mean, if we're open, of course we'll meet here, but for whatever reason I booked
No.
it, yeah.
Unless, for sure, next month, March,
Yeah.
April.
At least 3, maybe more.
Maybe.
So, right.
Knows about June, the coin flip. Okay,
Right.
cool.
It will be beautiful when it's done though.
It's June 1 to take other actions, but. I also wanted to mention, nothing to do with the board, but I think yesterday everyone should have gotten the Michigan Association of Planning schedule for trainings coming up. And there's a couple ones in particular I thought might be relevant to some of us. There's a site plan review, that's in Mount Pleasant off-site. Then planning and zoning essentials, which Dave and I have done, I know others haven't. Anyone new should definitely do this one. March 16th, it's off-site in Frankenmuth, if you're so inclined. And then, but March 21 and 22, you can take it online. So,
I have a few planning commissioners and my other client community doing that one, a virtual one.
because we did,
Franklin sounds good though.
Yeah, but that sounds so bad. huh?
we did
That's
swear
really-
that we would all do some training at least every 2 years, right, Dave?
We did.
And,
Has anyone done it in person and virtually and can offer a recommendation for the merits of either?
I did
We
the
did it
planning
in person.
essentials in person, was it at Grand Valley, right? Was it at Grand-
No,
It was
No, it
downtown
was-
Grand Rapids.
yeah.
But I did during COVID, I did the master planning online. And it's tougher online, but we all know that, but we've had more practice now than I might have had then.
Was it effective?
I prefer
Oh,
it in
yeah,
person.
you get the materials and you're seeing, the experts talking, so you just don't get the
Just more interactive.
camaraderie.
Yeah.
Finding
Is
out
it
where-
1 day?
2 nights.
2 days?
My main issue with the Zoom meetings or training is a lot of people were coughing and over the speakers, and I couldn't hear a lot of what they were saying because people were coughing in the background.
So is it hybrid? Or did they just not have it on mute? Everybody had-
Well, as the people were speaking, there was an audience there.
So,
And
it's the
I
people that
tried
are-
to Zoom, so yeah. That we do have.
And Gordon, actually, the in-person planning and zoning essentials is 1 day. That's from 11:30 to 4:30. And the virtual is on 2 days, and that's in the evenings from 6 to 8. March 21 and 22nd.
So what was the date for the 1 day again?
The 1 day is March 16th,
16 March.
but it's in Frankenmuth.
Are you reading from this document right here?
Yeah.
I am.
Well, there was also, you're all getting the emails, right?
Well, you said it came yesterday.
Yeah.
I just get it.
John, I'm not
I
getting it.
haven't seen it.
I'm not getting
Friends, the March 21 is the night of our,
my-
or no,
my-
it's not, never mind. The second.
I mean, they'd be going to your soccer.
Maybe the third. March 21 is a planning commission meeting.
We'll check on that.
And the township does pay for this?
Yes, and if you go to Frankenmuth, we pay your line.
Oh, that's good. All right, thank you. Renee?
I only have one thing, our zoning ordinance committee is meeting on the 31st of January, so we will have kind of more information for you at the next meeting, but that's scheduled, so hopefully we'll see some
And there's,
product.
I believe there's 3 monthly ones scheduled out,
Yes.
January,
January,
March.
February, and March are all scheduled. Our next agenda, we do have a site plan submittal for the brewery that came in. We also have the site plan materials for Auto Camp. They got them in for the deadline, just I think anticipating a favorable response today. So those would be on your agenda. We do have a site plan submittal for the Best Buds, that cannabis retail. However, there were some issues that we had with the site plan. So we've asked them to make those changes before they come back. So they didn't get it in time for our February meeting, so that might be in March. I'm also hearing that there might be a change to the site plan for new standard. They want to add a drive-through. So I don't know if that will come back to the planning commission or not, or if that's just a minor change, but I haven't seen that yet.
Copy, Green Koi has one. Green Koi has one. Do you want to have your card?
Okay.
My bonus.
As we're talking about site plan, any change with top grade? Are we good with what we?
Yes, with top grade, I'm going to be sending them a letter with all of those conditions in it and putting, having that in the file, so we have it for future reference, but I haven't heard anything from them.
Yeah, they haven't.
Okay. Just just keep it track of. The other thing, my other comment is, in our bylaws, we have an order of business. But our agenda is not showing that now. So whether we need to change our agendas so that it shows the order of business that we approved in our bylaws.
Oh, thank you for that reminder.
As realizing that we also have a second public hearing that people can address too. So we need to kind of move into that.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a copy of it.
You all make sure.
Well, they only got approved at the
I know.
board meeting, so a week ago, they weren't official yet.
All right, so just as a reminder.
Thank you.
What's the status of New Holland Hospital?
Oh, thank you for asking. Holland Hospital submitted their final draft site plans with all of the conditions of approval. I've had several calls with them about the tree buffers. We got it. And I looked at it today. That was one of the things I worked on today. I don't believe that their lighting plan meets the limits. I think it's still too bright based on the limits in our ordinance. So that was the only comment I had. But they're getting ready to pull their building permits. So yeah.
So the site plan, they don't have to come back to us. But they have to abide by the conditions.
Yeah, we had a lot of talks about that. I don't know, but they did have, they have to take this approval to their board and to their different committees and all of that, but they've had very favorable responses. And they did say that, they're projecting quite a large need for this facility. Like it's not just taking what they're already doing here and moving it, but there's just a large demand in the whole, like Ottawa County, this whole area for primary care physicians and this type of service.
Something about stress of meetings going over 2 hours, causes heart attacks.
Well, on that note, I have a motion. Make a motion. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.